My name is Matt Payne. I'm a professional drummer. I live in Nashville or Franklin, Tennessee. I started playing when I was in grade school, like basic grade school band function, and then started playing in bands. Started playing at school, playing in church. I was really involved in church, and so that really took me all the way through high school. Really involved. I was playing 5, 6 nights a week sometimes just because of rehearsals and chapels and this and that. And then also, I had a band through high school, and we rehearsed all the time. And it was just so much a part of who I was. Once I hit about 14, it was just like it's almost my entire existence was playing music. The turning point for me was really I'd met some people when I was younger and just had some influence as far as like meeting some guys who were in bands and touring and things like that. And I just knew that's what I wanted to do. I stayed after high school. I attempted the college thing for a short amount of time, and I literally packed up my drums. I had a crummy old Honda Civic hatchback, and I filled it full of drums and as much clothes would fit, and drove to Nashville. Really didn't know anybody. The first thing that happened to me when I moved to town is I realized how good everybody was when I got here. So honestly, the first 6 months of me being here were I just practiced. I woodshedded and practiced and got my playing a lot more than just chops. I had to learn how to read a number chart. I had to learn how to um, play with loops, play with more than just playing with a click, how to show up and do all this other stuff that I just didn't have a clue coming from a small Midwest town. And so the first 6 months I just woodshedded. And then in that process, I started slowly meeting people. And once my playing was up to a place where I feel like I had something to offer, um, that's when I really started going after and just networking and meeting people. And it was just kind of one person led to another person, which led to 10 other people, which it was just this constant state. I remember that place in my life where I was literally meeting 50 new people a week that were all involved in the music industry. So I think a lot of the key to just playing with different people and being thrown in different scenarios is being flexible, being in so much of what I do as a professional player. It's like any professional career. It's you have to get along with the people that you're with. You have to really treat it as a team. Um, it's no different than if I was going to be a salesman. I would get hired because I can sell well. I'm getting hired because I can play the drums well. But if I'm not a part of that team, if I can't adapt and mold to their mission or what's going on, then my service is completely useless. So um, that's always been one of my biggest keys to success. Is just been able to go in and personality wise really meld with everybody and make it feel like I'm really part of the team. Because lots of times you get in situations where it's a group of guys who have been playing together for 3, 4 years, and I'm the new guy. And being the drummer, being the guy who kind of drives the show, you really have to be what's the word I'm looking for? You really have to just be sensitive to what's going on and really, understand what they're looking for and kind of mold into that. It's way less about me as a player, and it's more about the situation that I'm falling into. I think there's two things that you need to do going into any situation, especially playing with a new artist or a new situation. And this goes for anything, like whether you're showing up and playing at a church or playing at a club or anything. Anything where you need to truly be prepared, different than like a session where you're learning something on the day. Be over prepared. Know the material inside and out. And know that when they tell you that, hey, we're cutting the bridge here or this is extended, you know the material well enough where you can go in and you're like, oh, no problem. And notate your chart or however you need to do it. So it gives you a sense of power because you know the material so well that you're walking into a situation and they're saying, hey, we do it different. And you're saying, no problem. It also gives the band an incredible sense of security because I mean, playing drums and knowing what that feels like. I mean, because of what you said earlier, the drum is really the anchor of the whole show. So, um, knowing the material, the band can just feel like, hey, this guy knows his stuff, and so they have that sense of security. So they're less worried about guiding you and more concerned about playing with you in that situation. So it just, I mean, I think being prepared, I think that's one of the biggest things. And even personality wise, it instantly shows that you really care about the situation that you're going into. So being a live player as opposed to a studio player, I really consider myself a live player. I really excel at playing live. And there's a lot of things that it's just like playing in the studio. It's just a different set of rules as far as being consistent, and even the things like how to drive it and how to even how to hit and how to really be a rock solid, person. And then also add in the elements of tracks. One of the biggest things that I do, that's a huge part of what I do, is I run tracks. I know tracks inside and out, whether it just be click or whether it be like an extensive multi-output track situation. I run that, and so knowing that and informing the band on count-ins and being very vocal and just being that strong presence is just very important in a live setting, because it's like, I mean, we've all been to those shows where the drummer just is so in control. You're almost drawn to that. Well, the band is drawn to that just as the audience is. And I think lots of times when you see a drummer who's not in control, the band doesn't know what's going on. It really makes the ship feel like really shaky. And so for me personally, like, I really enjoy it, but it is hard. It's really difficult as far as sustaining relationships, and emotionally, like, it can be really draining and difficult. And it can also be like physically very difficult if you let it get the best of you. I think a lot of people, especially a lot of younger players, they get in these patterns where it's their first bus tour and they're sleeping all day and they're staying up all through the night and their clocks are all backwards, and they end up just feeling horrible come showtime, and they're broken down. It's like it's allowing yourself to be disciplined, because lots of times people get on the road and they don't have any discipline, and the road gets the best of them because of the lack of discipline. But if you go into it with the disciplined mind of like, I'm going to wake up at this set time every day, and I'm going to go run, and then I'm going to go to the hotel, and then, sound check and dinner. It becomes a regimen. It becomes a routine. You can't you can't work a job without some form of routine. And you see that a lot. And it really helps you physically, mentally, even work-wise, your work ethic as a whole. Really, if you get a set plan of what's going on, it allows you to utilize your downtime as well. Because we have a lot of downtime, and utilize that for more positive things. So my primary responsibilities out there are to set the gear up and make sure that everything's working and everything's sounding right. And whether it be changing out heads, I'm constantly changing drum heads, checking for any like parts, things like that. Basically, my job is to make sure that the show goes off flawlessly. And even down to audio stuff, like taking care of making sure that it's lots of times like new technology with these like clip-on microphones that clip to the drums, making sure those are secure, because you have mics fall down or things like that. It can really ruin or take away from a moment in the show. But primarily, I get called because of my ability to tune, and tuning is something that I've just learned throughout the years, just picking up different pieces, and I've been able to spend some time with some really amazing techs and people, just kind of glean wisdom from different people that will teach you how to get in any situation. So you show up with this rental kit that looks like it has gone 10 rounds with Rocky, and you can somehow come out with it sounding pretty good. So I think that's one of the biggest things too, is understanding the product that you're actually putting on your drums because of the fact that there's so many different options and so many different sounds and different, and you might see your favorite drummer who's using like a Remo coated Ambassador as his head of choice. The thing is that he's in a high budget deal. He's probably getting drum heads for free, and his tech's probably changing his heads every show. If you're in a young rock band, I wouldn't recommend using coated Ambassadors. I would use pinstripes or something thicker, something that's going to last you a month or 2 months, depending on what your budget looks like, because you need something that's going to sustain. And you get in situations where, like a lot of these guys, I mean, even in my own situation, my own playing, I change snare drum head out every 2 shows. And because I feel like it needs it. And also, I think as a player, as you get better and better, you start hitting, and you can see it on the drum. You kind of go from, a range about this big to smaller and smaller. And if you're consistently hitting night after night in a space that's that big, well, the head is going to get pitted in this very small area, which actually wears the heads out much faster than if you were just randomly hitting all over. So I think as you get better, you have to change drum heads out, more often. So now with this, I mean, like going through like changing heads, you have to like properly seat the head, and so I'll just like with this, now this head is about to be changed. Yeah, just loosen. And I generally will go diagonally across the drum, so you kind of I don't want to like loosen all this side, because you do kind of risk warping the rim and things like that. You want to keep it consistent as possible. All right. So there you go. So here's a tip for changing drum heads out. I know you can't always do this, but it's something I try to do. So if I'm looking at the drum in the stand, I have the throw directly across from me right here, and I'm going to take the drum head off, and I'm actually going to place it so that it's in the same position. So when I put it back on, I'm actually putting the drum head, or the hoop, on the head at the same position so when you hit, if you constantly have it in the stand at the same place, because the hoop will kind of naturally like bend, and nothing major, but it's just a piece of metal. So I mean, as you're hitting, especially if you're a really hard hitter, the whole drum will kind of react the same. So if you consistently keep your hoop in the same spot as opposed to rotating it, it'll actually help avoid warping, even though that doesn't make much sense. But if you're constantly moving it, because you'll get small increments, and next thing you know, the hoop is like, it doesn't know what to do. So your hoop will be sitting like this because you were constantly moving where it was going. So I just took the old head off, and I'm put a new head on, and this is a head that I use live constantly. It's made by Remo, and it's a coated Emperor, and it's a 2-ply head. It's a little thicker, and so it's just going to last a little longer, and it has a little less overtone, and live engineers seem to like it a lot. So I've started using Emperors on most of my snare drums, especially for live. Now in the studio, I'll probably use an Ambassador, which is thinner. It's more open. It's going to give you more ring. But in that setting, a studio engineer, because there's mics everywhere, and they love ring because they can EQ it out, or you can have a drum. I'll have drums that to the ear just sound like they're just explosive, and in the control room they'll sound like this big and just tight. So but live is a little different, just based on, because you're mixing this full band. So I like to use something that's just a little bit deader. And also, it lasts longer. So for most drummers, they can get at least probably 10 shows out of using an Emperor as opposed to like an Ambassador, which will only last you a handful of shows. And then, you'll start feeling that straight away. You'll start, now what am I looking for? You'll start sensing that the drum's just sounding goofy and not sounding right, and you keep getting the pitch higher and higher because you're stretching the mylar every time you hit it. So something is thicker, it's going to react better. And what I do here is once I've got the head and the hoop on, I just kind of go around and I make sure that everything's in there, and I'll generally go around and just finger tight, not even finger tight, I just use my fingers and tighten the lugs up till they're just to the point where they're just sitting right on the hoop, so that I can consistently, so when I go to tighten the drum head up, they're all ready to go. And what I do is I just stick my finger in the middle, and it kind of, you can see all the ruffles, and I'll start on one lug, and I'll kind of get it to the point where I start to lose and then I go directly across. And then, as opposed to going to the next one, I actually skip, and I skip one, and so I go every other. So I'll go up here, and then I'll come across from there, and then again I'll skip one, and then I'll go across, and then I'll skip and go across. And so you're getting a really even tension point across the drum. So I'm basically doing sections. If I go from here to here, I've got this whole triangular section, and then from here to here, well, the width, I'm actually clamping the head down evenly over a width of about that big as opposed to about that big. So it just helps, like, consistency wise with the drum. And then once I get it kind of to a point, and then you're back at zero. And then I'll just start going across in the same patterns. And then what I'll do is I'll take my finger off, and you can hear the drum head actually cracking, and that's what we call seating. And what's happening is the head, if you can see here, now this head is seated, and so you can actually see kind of a sharp edge around the head. Now when the head was brand new, it didn't really carry that characteristic. So you clamp it down, because that's how the tone is made. There's an edge on the drum, and as you clamp the head down, it's going to form to that edge. So if you stretch the head over that, the vibration of the drum is going to, you're going to be able to utilize that. So, and then once I get it tight, I'm actually going to go and just torque it down pretty good, like get it higher than you would actually play the drum. And what I'll actually do at this point, that it's real tight, I'll let it sit. And actually, the longer I can let it sit, the better. Like lots of times when I'm changing heads, I'll be the first guy off the bus in the morning, and I'll change all the heads in the backstage. Like the drum cases will roll off, and I'll crack them open. And sometimes at 10 in the morning, I will torque all the heads down. As you can hear it cracking and popping right now. And that's good. It's really settling in on the drum. And I will change the drum heads at, let's say, 10 in the morning, and I'll go and eat lunch, and then we'll come back, and I'll come back at 1 if we sound check at 2, and I'll actually, at that point, loosen the heads, and then go back down and tune them all for they're ready to go. So kind of the longer you can let them sit, the better. And some guys do it overnight. And then, I mean, you get in a pinch, and sometimes you just need to crank it down, and 2 minutes later you need to just do it, or you don't always get the opportunity. But in an ideal world, I like to at least let them sit for at least 15 to 20 minutes. If you can let them sit longer, let them sit longer. But if you can't, I understand. So basically, some time has elapsed, even though you probably haven't seen it or felt it. Believe me, about 15 minutes has gone by, and we've been sitting here, and it's been cracking and popping and doing its thing. And I'm at a point now where I'm going to get ready to tune the drum. So what I do is, it's really tight right now, and so what I'll actually do is detune the drum, just like I tune the drum up. So I'll go across 1, 2, skip 1, skip 1, skip 1. I actually got lost here somewhere. And I'll bring the drum now down below where I would play it. So kind of get the lugs, you know, so that they're... I'm not going to play it that low at all. And so, and you get everything to the point, and then you start, and then I'll go back and I'll put my finger in the middle, and I'll start tuning up. Again, same way. Kind of skipping 1, and for me, tuning is really a feel thing. Some of these guys, they have these meters and they measure the tension and all that stuff. I've never been a guy like that, or they sit there and they hit the, and sometimes you can tell, but for me, it's always just been a matter of feel, and I can kind of feel the lug tension, and I can also feel the tension of the head, and especially with bottom heads and snare drums, like on the bottom, you can dramatically change the sound of the drum. Lots of times I'll get in a rental situation where I'm using a rental snare drum, not my own, and I'll get it, and the snare wires are just tight as they can be, and the bottom head is just torqued down really tight, and the drum just goes boom, boom, and that's the first place I start. I'll flip the drum around, loosen the bottom head till it gets this kind of like this kind of tight but spongy, this like spongy feel, and then loosen the snare wires so they can kind of, until they're a little bit free, and then turn the drum around, and instantly I've got a drum we can work with 9 times out of 10. And so I'm kind of bringing the drum up to pitch, and again, like I'll just kind of go around, and you can feel if you've got like a really loose lug, and constantly just kind of tapping it with my finger, getting a feel for it. And at this point, I kind of feel like the drum is in a range. It's at a nice, like medium-high tension. I like to play the snare drum pretty high because I like the way it feels. And occasional situation, I'll have a drum head that's tuned really low, but I don't want it too high. I don't want it so high that it's actually choking the drum. I want to be able to hear the drum, and there is kind of a delicate range there from medium high to too high, and so you'll know when you get into that high pitch range, it just sounds like a ring. It's just like ding, ding, and at that point, all you're hearing is the top head that's just choked the shell, so you have no tone of the drum. So. Yeah, and then so I'll kind of start here. And so it's nice. It's like, it's kind of in that range, right, where you can feel it out here. And from when I do a rim shot, so the ghost notes, you can feel like the... And then when I go to really, it's nice and tight. Now the drum does have a little bit of a ring to it, and that's kind of a characteristic of this drum. It actually has a really pleasant ring. Not all ring is bad ring. But in certain situations, I use a product all the time called Moon Gel. And this is a Moon Gel. It's actually really old because you can keep reusing this stuff if you just wash it off. But I'll take a Moon Gel and I'll actually place it towards the edge of the drum, and I'll just set it on there. And with the Moon Gel, it just really focuses and tightens the drum up. And I know a lot of guys like to use it. And just a small piece. Actually, normally when it comes, I'll take the full pieces and I'll cut them in half and use a half piece of moon gel. I find that the whole piece really just overchokes the drum, makes it a little too tight in there. But it just, there you go. That's a really tough question to answer. I just think it just takes such hard work, and it takes, I think, falling into the mindset. I've seen so many guys, and I tell people this all the time, that there are drummers who could play circles around me who work at the Home Depot. They get so caught up on their own talent and their own ability. It's really, it's about supporting other people's talents. It's about walking into a situation and being able to support. We're support artists. It's the backbone of the band, and it's not about me, and it's not about you as a drummer or you as a well. And I think that's across the board, whether you're a guitar player or a bass player. It's like nobody wants to hear a bass player who's just showing off and just riffing off, all the time. And those guys get fired, no matter how good they are. And I think a lot of it, and you do have to know your stuff, and chops and being great at your instrument is very important. But I just think it's one of those things where you also need to understand there's this whole other side of it, and there's being likable and being personable and all those things, and they're all involved, and they're all equally as important as playing drums or whatever your instrument is. So that's the biggest advice that I would give, is just every situation, make sure you're actually playing and performing for the situation. What can you do better for that specific artist or that specific song? And that, if you go in with that mentality, that'll get you a long way.